Hello,
Hello.
hello. Right at the same time, Jinx. How are you doing, Chelsea? Oh, good. I think I'm struggling to hear you a little bit. Let me adjust my audio.
Hello.
Are we all being very quiet, or do I have a speaker issue?
I think we're all being very quiet today.
Okay, I have a speaker issue.
Hmm.
Office is very hot.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Good.
Sandy and George, you're both in town?
Yes, are you?
I am. I'm going to click to the camera in just a moment. I was quickly writing talking points for that Marshall bill, which is up in committee this afternoon. So I apologize, I'm a minute or two late. Are either of you testifying against or amend or
I'm not.
no?
Yeah.
Okay. And George, you're muted. I don't know if you're planning on testifying or not. He completely changed the bill with a new amendment, but I'll stop because it looks like we might have everyone.
Um,
I'll have to check into it then.
Yeah.
I just have meetings all day,
Oh, it never stops, does it? I'll tell you.
Troy, I'm so sorry. This is still showing up on your calendar. You don't need to be here if you don't want to. You're not on the executive committee.
I was just wondering that. So thank you. I appreciate you letting me know.
Yeah, you can delete all the ones that say executive committee on the first Monday of the month.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
WebEx cannot figure it out. I cannot find people's names anywhere. The only thing they can think of is I use like the meeting as a template and then made the EC meetings and just deleted people who are not on the executive committee. And some people it just stayed, but no one knows where their names are or how to get rid of them. George keeps coming in and out.
Okay, I got my audio working. We're good.
Okay. I think we're ready. We do have a new person in the room, so I'm going to turn it over to Rhiannon and Burke to get us started.
Thank you for that, Chelsea. This is mostly for Burke to do, but I just wanted to let all of the folks in the room and on the executive committee know we are staffing Stedman's contract with my colleague and director of Burke. What's your new title? Why don't you come in and introduce yourself?
You can't remember my new title?
I have a lot going on right now.
I think that's, yeah. My name is Burke Fish, and I'm the director for organizational development with Stedman Group. I'm part of our opioid settlement team and other parts of Stedman Group. So I'll be joining Rosie to help support the work in the region, and mostly just to support Rosie, who's going to be kind of your point person for this region with backup support, technical support for me. So pleasure to meet with you. And I know I look forward to working with all of you.
Burke, thank you for that. I'm sorry that I couldn't get your title right. I didn't want to do it dirty. Burke is currently leading in Douglas County and Region 1, which is northwest corner up in the state. And so he's been doing this work alongside me for quite some time. And I think you guys are in good hands with Rosie and Burke. Also know that you have JK whenever needed. And I think JK's substance use subject matter expertise might be needed as you all enter the application review and evaluation process. So JK has not gone anywhere. He's still here, and we can tap into his brain whenever we need. And Chelsea, I think that's all from us.
All right. So first item on the agenda is a letter of support request. This is our first official letter of support request. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean Henley to explain a little bit about who he is, what he does, and the letter of support. And I'll pull it up.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me and entertaining this request. So, yeah, I'm very new to the council and the executive committee, but I'm really grateful to be a part of. As far as, I guess, just the context of this request comes from the work that I do full time, which is at Red Rock Recovery Center. We're a full continuum substance use disorder treatment provider in Jefferson County. We specialize in working with adults here in community. We have an inpatient facility in Morrison, and then our outpatient office is in Lakewood. We've been open for a little over 10 years here operating in the area, and over the last 2.5 years, we've been working to provide our services to individuals who are covered by Medicaid, and specifically the RAE here in Jefferson County is CCHA. And what we've been starting to become aware of from our vantage point, as well as some other local providers that I've been speaking with, is some practices that appear, at least on the surface, to be unethical and bordering on unsafe in regards to utilization management for their members when it comes to managing specifically medical detox levels of care for substance use disorder. So specifically, what we're seeing is across the board. I guess let me back up. So traditionally, with these levels of care, authorization is going to always be required from whatever payer you're working with. And how that works is it's supposed to be based off of medical necessity, which they use ASAM criteria to determine medical necessity and what level of care someone's appropriate for. And from that, they'll authorize a certain number of days of treatment. And at which point, once those are exhausted, there's a review process to either continue authorization or to step the person down. What CCHA does is they just issue a blanket 4-day authorization no matter what the circumstances are. No matter if the person's a fentanyl addict who isn't even able to take medications for 36 hours to start treating their withdrawal symptoms, no matter if they're having acute alcohol withdrawal symptoms, combined with like a seizure disorder. And it's not just unique to Red Rock. Like I said, I've been talking to other providers as well. So what I was talking with Chelsea about last week was it's our intention to work with the Department of Insurance to request that they investigate this. There's other providers that are interested in endorsing the letter as well. and just bringing it up to the council to see if it aligns with their mission and if it's something that they would be willing to support as well. So I'll kind of just leave it there. If there's any questions, be happy to address those now, or if it's something we need to follow up with.
And I emailed the letter out about an hour. I'm sorry it was not in the agenda. We can co-sign this. We can draft our own letter of support. We can draft a letter of acknowledgement. I did ask Stedman Group to weigh in on this, gave them a heads up, and then kind of hear from legal on what we can do.
Do we have that information now from legal and the Stedman Group?
I think we're hoping to talk about that now, Leslie.
Okay.
Just a couple of clarifying questions from me, and this is probably for Sean, and these are probably dumb questions, but I'm going to ask them to make sure everyone's on the same page. This letter that you've drafted for us is specifically going to be submitted to the Colorado Department of Insurance, right? That is the entity that you're trying to submit the letter to?
That's right. I mean, there's some CC entities at the bottom that we're considering whether or not to send. I mean, really the jurisdiction for this type of investigation would be through the Department of Insurance under DORA.
And the letter, the body of the letter, I think people are probably reading now to try to orient themselves, is basically explaining that the current practice of CCHA is causing harm for people with substance use disorder in the region that Region 10 serves.
Correct.
And so there's not really any action associated with this. If the council were to sign this, it would basically just be saying, we do not agree with your current approach. We agree with Red Rocks that it is causing harm, and we hope that you will start to do something about it.
Okay, because yeah, just to clarify, there is kind of a call to action that an investigation take place.
Will you
It
talk to us a
started
little
out-
bit about that?
Well, yeah, it started out with a more kind of aggressive call to action, but after talking to some other providers, felt like that might not be the best approach. So really, I mean, at minimum, we just want it to be looked into, because all we can see is, things from our end. There could be policies, procedures that CCHA operates within that do somehow bring it into alignment with what the ASAM medical necessity criteria, which these authorizations are supposed to be based on. But from our standpoint, we're not able to see that. And I mean, I should have also said we're seeing 4-day authorizations. Some other local providers are seeing as little as 2-day authorizations. And these are for people coming straight off the streets, multiple year fentanyl addiction, and they're having to get processed through without even being able to take, Suboxone in that amount of time, and then get kind of thrown back out on the street, more or less. So yeah, I guess just to answer your question, that's the call to action on our end, that the Department of Insurance would initiate whatever type of investigation they would need to, and take appropriate action based off their findings.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for letting me ask those and dig in a little bit further. From a substance use disorder subject matter expertise, I'm going to weigh in and say that everything that Sean is sharing about the time needed for authorizations and the amount of time that various individuals would need to be safely medically detoxed is variable. Like, this all follows with our understanding of what is best practice. And so what Sean is encountering, at least from a substance use expertise, it is a concern and an issue that is negatively impacting people in our region. And I'd love to hear other subject matter experts, like maybe Tim or Michael, weigh in on this as well to ensure this is what you're seeing. I think the next part of this conversation, we will have to lean on Jean and Eric to determine what potential liabilities signing a letter of support or maybe a letter of acknowledgement with this call to action might create for the council.
I'll let the subject matter experts talk first.
Well, this isn't really my area of expertise. One of the questions that I would ask, though, is the intent to better understand, right? To your point, if I can't get treatment for 3 days and I only have 2 days in the clinic or 2 days in the treatment, it isn't beneficial to me in any way, shape, or form, right? So are there out there some standards for whether you're coming in with an alcohol addiction or whether you're coming in with fentanyl addiction or whatever it is that you're coming in with? Are there certain standards that they're using? And if this is if this is the information that we're after, is there a better way to do it than a letter of complaint, right? Of a general inquiry? Can you please provide us some better understanding? And if the answer is no, we're not going to provide you any transparency or clarity at all, which seems to be the go-to these days here in this country. Then a letter of complaint, I think, would be an appropriate action. But if our intent is to garner information and to understand what is best practice and what parameters are they using or regulations are they following, I don't know that this is the best way to go about it.
Can I respond really quick? Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. And that's something that perhaps I could have included in the letter, more description about what we've done so far. And one of the steps we've taken is to set up meetings with the people we have access to at CCHA to kind of go over those concerns and to see if there is more transparency we can get. And so far, we've not received anything that's satisfactory.
Okay. You're muted, Brianna.
Thank you, Tim. Pretty good at that these days. But Sean, this is a question that is a little unrelated to this council, but could potentially help us wrap our head around it and also might serve you. Have you connected with anyone at COPA, the Colorado Providers Association, about this issue?
It's actually something that I was thinking about after I met with Chelsea the other week, because I think it was actually, or no, it might have been in this regards, because it was to talk about potential lobbying efforts. And I have not. It's been some time since I've been in touch with COPA. I have former colleague Rourke Weaver, he and I were attending for a while, but yeah, to answer your question, no.
So I just dropped a contact info. Bria, the ED of COPA, she, in the past, when there have been policy related issues that are affecting multiple substance use behavioral health providers in the state, starting at an advocacy related agency like COPA and then letting COPA like rally the troops and get all of the organizations that are encountering this kind of together and on one page has worked really well for making change happen. So as this issue continues to evolve, and regardless of how this council moves forward with this letter, I think it would be a great conversation to reach out to Bria and say, hey, I'm seeing this with CCHA and it's really impacting the people we're serving. Can we talk about it? Can we put it on a future agenda? Now, I also asked that because I think, to Tim's point, whatever the call to action is here that the council is going to put their name behind, that's kind of like what matters. That's the meat of this letter. And that's what legal needs to kind of sort through in order to determine if it's a liability for the council or not. And so based on what we currently have in the letter as the call to action, do you all have any concerns? Eric, John?
So I'll go first. big picture, I think any single person can probably make a complaint to the Division of Insurance and get movement on it. That's not to dismiss the idea that multiple people or entities contacting might be helpful, but I don't think you should assume that unless this committee sends that letter, nothing is going to happen. That's just not the case. I would encourage you to, if this is of concern to you, look into it a bit more. You know, Tim's idea was a good one. You could, even this committee or a representative of this committee could reach out directly and see if they could get a response. The liability, this is a complaint to an administrative agency. You're not going to very quickly accrue liability making a complaint to an administrative agency, but I would make sure that you have done some due diligence and you can stand behind whatever you're saying in the letter, and that may well involve trying to reach out to them directly. Those are some thoughts.
Michael Miller was typing something in the chat, so waiting for that to come through. And then I saw George's hand up, but you put it down.
Yeah, thank you. Couple questions for starters. I'm on the board of the Jefferson Center for Mental Health. I don't know if I'm recently on the board. Sandy, you might know better. I think they may provide this service as well, and I know they have a relationship with CCHA. Is there any insight coming from the Jefferson Center that you want to share on this issue? Have you had any conversations with them?
Don, I think that was directed at you.
To me?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't. I don't have any. I guess contacts over there that would be able to speak to this information. But I can say definitively, just to the prior point and then what Tim brought up, that we have had multiple conversations with CCHA, and they've actually admitted to us that their average authorization length for this level of care is like 2.7 days. And that's like across the board. And it was almost like a statement of like pride the way that they put it, which was kind of gross.
They probably have that cost control lens. The reason I asked about the Jefferson Center is because I'm just starting to get up to speed about the Medicaid crisis. And I'm a little bit concerned about like the other options that CCHA has. I'm not trying to like say the points you make in this letter aren't valid. I just am maybe a little bit pessimistic. I mean, if the answer is more Medicaid funding, I think we frankly lost that fight in November. And I don't want to sound pessimistic. I just, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to make a statement here. And the statement that I'm trying to make is that before I sign a letter asking for an investigation, I might want to just consult with some other people and make sure I understand, what the alternatives are here from a policy perspective. So that's a statement. Here's a question. Are they violating the law? Is this ASAM criteria? Is this legally binding criteria? Is this best practice or a legal requirement?
I mean, it's almost, I guess as in terms of if it's violating a law, we haven't gone down the path of doing all that much research in that regard. I can tell you it's best practice. I can tell you it's a parity issue because that's how they evaluate all other types of healthcare, is based on medical necessity. And yeah, I agree with you as far as your previous statement. It's a little bit it's hard to see kind of light at the end of the tunnel with the direction things are going. I still, at the end of the day, with the amount of lives that are covered by CCHA, I feel like the process bears investigation because it is causing harm. And as far as the alternatives, I don't know that that's something that, I don't want to say it's not my problem, but it's really, they're responsible for administering this benefit in good faith.
Yeah,
And,
I agree. So then the last sort of thing I want to bring up is I think it's HICPUF that contracts with CCHA
and
for
their
healthcare policy and financing. And they have a contract with standards that CCHA has to meet, and it might be worth a conversation with HICPUF. And we may know somebody on our team that has contact there, Chris. I wonder if their contracts speak to this practice, or if they can speak to this practice, because that might be another advocacy avenue.
George, can I mention one thing? Sorry, this is former bureaucrat, behavioral health bureaucrat for the state years ago, but they still apply. Is that the standards of care, the licensure for every agency who provides substance use disorder is based on the ASAM level of care and everything within it. And those are written rules at the Secretary of State's office that says that's what every licensed provider must follow. So if you have one rule that's doing one thing, then the other rule should be paying accordingly to that rule, is what I would argue.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And that's all from me. I'm sure others have thoughts here.
But HICPUF is the right place to, because they wrote a different rule.
I just want to also just point out that we work with 6 out of the 7 Medicaid regions, and CCHA is the only one that operates this way.
Sean, I'm glad you brought that up and wanted to just call some attention to some things that Chelsea and Michael are sharing in the chat. First of all, Chelsea dropped the best practice standard general guidelines for how long people need to detox for various substances. Notice that all of these, the minimum is 3, and CCHA told Sean their average is under 3. So there's that. The other point that I wanted to make, and I'm glad that Michael dropped this in the chat, the entire system that this whole problem is operating under is in flux. And we are in the process of moving into BHASOs, BHSOs. I don't remember what the heck that stands for. Because of that, all of the MSOs are struggling. They don't quite know what the future holds. They don't quite know where funding is. And if there were to be a call out to them, like, hey, we don't like the way that you're doing business, it would be really dumb of them to not respond in some way because of how challenged the system is right now. And so I wanted to say that. And then I also wanted to call out that Michael said, and I think I agree with this, but I'd be curious for you all to weigh in. It's a pretty easy ask for us to sign on to something like this. There's probably not a lot of liability attached to it, as Eric pointed out. We could potentially ruffle some feathers at CCHA, which is something that this group should consider. But given even a little bit more exploration from Sean, perhaps he connects with COPA and he connects with JCMH and then reports back, we might be in a relatively comfortable place and have the information we need to really decide if we want to get behind this challenge or not. But I think this is an issue that we're going to continue to see impacting the people in Region 10, regardless of how we get involved or don't get involved. It's that, Sean, I commend you. This is a mess.
Yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle. So I'm just reading, catching up in the chat. Yeah, I mean, and I really appreciate the suggestions and the potential contacts here, because I disclosed earlier, this isn't something that we've been like, this letter. I'm saying we haven't just been sitting on it for months trying to figure out the best way to get it out. It is kind of in the early stages ish. I've talked with a handful of other providers, and then I brought it up to Chelsea. It was a week or two ago. I don't think I expected it to be able to get to this level so quickly. So I mean, that I'm impressed and grateful for that, but I'm also understanding if it's something that needs to be discussed further, if we want to talk to some of these other groups to kind of get their recommendations and then circle back. But I mean, to the point earlier that I can't remember who made it, that we have filed individual complaints with the Department of Insurance and had favorable outcomes, and I'm sure that it would be the case that happened again in this instance. But I think just the scale that this seems to be going on at, to me, is of concern, and I don't want it to be like the case that maybe they improve things slightly for us, but it doesn't really move the needle in a meaningful way across the board if we have that potential to do that now. If that makes sense.
I want to acknowledge Sandy's hand and then Leslie's hand, and I'm also going to drop that we have the option to draft our own independent letter of support or letter of acknowledgement, especially given Michael's comment too, is that the GROC is a hub in the region that CCHA serves. So a letter from us is a pretty big advocate. And then I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Thank you. So I want to first say that I think we all hear that access and equity are being questioned. No one's doubting that. I think it's premature to do a letter. I think that there's a lot of steps that have already been discussed. I'm wondering if your colleagues in the providers might submit a letter first, if that's what you would like to do. I'm just cautious because as county commissioners, we also are working with Division of Insurance, BHA, other entities, and I want to make sure that we have clear answers to from some of the groups that were mentioned. And if all you hear is stall, 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 I might be more inclined to support a letter of support. Worded differently, I feel like this one's a little abruptly, maybe antagonistic the way that it starts out. But that's up for you to decide if your provider groups want to sign on as a collective body to a letter like this. So that's just my 2 cents. I just think it's something I would consider with more information and more actual facts that are brought to us by your group investigating more with these other groups. Maybe one of them would take it on and actually hear you better. So I think that this letter of support could be perceived as an opening for us to do letters of support for a lot of other groups. And so I just want to throw some caution out there that we think about it, because we really need to maintain our high reputation as a really effective council, GROC. And so I think there's just more to be done before a letter of support. That's my opinion. Thank you.
I'll just jump in real quick. I want to follow up on Commissioner Hollingsworth's comments, which I thought perfectly captured where my head is on this issue as well. I agree. It feels premature at this point. That is not to say that there aren't serious issues to dig in further. I also feel very protective of the Gateway to the Rockies Opioid Council when it comes to writing letters such as this one, and also agree with Commissioner Hollingsworth in terms of the tone. I started to write in the chat that I lean in favor of some of the strategies that Tim, Eric, Commissioner Hollingsworth, and others have placed on the table in terms of potential next steps. And let's see how those strategies move forward. And then if we need to come back and have another conversation about this, absolutely open to that. But working through these issues together in a way that also reflects our collaborative efforts with some of those different entities that Commissioner Hollingsworth just mentioned, I think and others, is critical. So I would not be prepared at this time to vote in favor of moving forward with putting GROC's name on this letter, but I am open to future conversations after some of the other strategies have been implemented, and greatly appreciate your bringing this to our attention. It's concerning.
I'm going to turn it over to George, and then in the interest of time, I'm going to summarize the conversation and next step.
Thank you. I can live with that. Some things I can live with down the road. If we need to write a letter, it should probably be after like a direct outreach. I think maybe Chelsea, it makes sense for you. Do you mind? Does the body think that it's wise for Chelsea to reach out to CCHA and say, hey, this is what we're hearing. What's going on? And that way, like, I would prefer that we had made that phone call before we wrote a letter. That feels like the clear next step. And then maybe we wait to hear back from you, Sean, about how other avenues are working or not working. I know I intend to ask the Jefferson Center what they're seeing here.
Yeah, so George, you kind of summarized what I was going to suggest be the takeaway from this. So my suggestion based on this conversation was that at the time we are not going to move forward with a letter of support. But I will work with Sean and the Stedman group on kind of investigating this to see what we're seeing in the landscape. I'll put together a short brief for the March council meeting. And then from there, we'll see if it's appropriate that we draft our own letter of support, or we draft a letter of acknowledgement, or we continue to just watch how this is unfolding with other people doing this work. Brandon, you look like you're going to say something.
You know me too well. I just dropped, Sean, this is for you in the chat. I think that connecting to the Behavioral Health Advisory Council, that was a suggestion that Michael Miller provided, and COPA are really going to help you wrap your head around how other providers are experiencing this and maybe get some more weight behind Red Rocks. And in the chat, I showed you a link where it lists all of the BHPAC members. Stedman is connected to quite a few of these. So if you don't know anyone on the list there, shoot us an email, and Rosie and Burke are going to drop their emails in the chat right now so they can follow up. And we'll get you connected to someone in there.
Awesome. Well, just want to say thanks to everyone for the consideration, the conversation, and some of the support. It means a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. All right, next on the agenda is, if I can share my screen. I disconnected from my doc and it changed the view. Next on the agenda is to finalize the March 24th agenda meeting. We do, I think it's Sam Wilson. I was just confirming that name. We'll do an update right here. To finalize the March agendas, we'll have our welcome, attendance, and quorum. We'll have a recovery story from, I believe it's Sam Wilson. Someone did sign up. I have to double check the name. Governance approving the February 24th minutes, announcing March 24th conflicts of interest. And then we are going to introduce a finance update from Chris. So Chris and I are working on what that would look like, aiming for like a 1-slide high-level snapshot of where we're at financially. And then we'll go into some updates. So I'll brief overview of the RFA webinars and attendance. The listening tours will have Jefferson and Gilpin will have gone by this time. Clear Creek is going to be 3 days later. And then I've introduced the CCHA complaint. I'll have a little brief for the council then. And then the rest of the meeting will be on training, education and training for the evaluation rubric for the RFAs that start the following week. Anything for that March, George?
Sorry, I don't have, that was an old hand.
Okay. Anyone else? Does that look good? Okay. Sean asked if he can stay. Sean, yes, this is an open meeting, so you're welcome to stay. All right, I also wanted to show everyone I've been working on a document that describes and outlines the RFA review process. So the pre-discussion preparation, this is when you're doing that asynchronous Monday.com form, assigning a value, a numerical value to the application. Again, a minimum of 4 people will review every application, 1 person from each of the 3 counties, and then an advisory board member. And then I will work with Chris to separate those, try to find that natural break. If we have a lot of applications, we're looking at that 91 score or higher, which would be a satisfactory. And then I give you some recommendations for how to be a grant reviewer that I will also review in March. Then we'll go over the group discussion structure. Tentatively, we'll do renewals first, and then I'll break up the applications by content. Then we'll move into capital so that we can figure out what the budget will look like for the rest of the buckets. In the discussion section, I will give a brief 4-minute overview of the grant application. And then each of the 4 reviewers who did that scorecard will have 3 minutes to talk about their initial impression of the application, if they have some critical questions they would like to pose for discussion. And then we'll open up to roughly 4 minutes of general discussion, gauge input from the community, people who are present in the room. And then we will have a Rosie came up with red light, green light. So red light means that that application will no longer be talked about. Green light means that the application will advance to the next round. We'll go through that process with all of the funding areas. Then when we get to the final round of discussion, all the applications that were green light, I will summarize all of those outstanding questions from the group discussion, give it to the applicant so they can respond to those questions, and then we will repeat the discussion format. So again, I'll provide a brief overview of the application. I will read the answers to the critical questions posed in the first round. We'll have 8 minutes for a more extensive discussion from everyone involved, and then we will have a final vote to fund or not. How does that sound to people?
Oh, 4 minutes for general discussion feels tight. Maybe a suggestion is to break out sort of questions and opinion sharing, right? Like, what are your questions about the application? Okay, we're done with our questions. Like, now who has a strong opinion and giving each, I mean, I don't know. I can figure out how to fill up 4 minutes with a question. Did I just talk for 4 minutes?
I think that's a brilliant addition to the process based on previous conversations about this.
So that leaves roughly 20 minutes for each application to be spoken about, but once I know how many applications have come in, we might be able to extend this too. So I have 3 minutes for each independent reviewer to give their overview. Are you saying cut that down to 2 minutes?
No, I'm saying add 4 minutes to the total amount of time per application. I think, and at 4 minutes, I'm kind of arriving at randomly, but.
Okay. I made a note there.
If someone, for example, states a concern and wants a yellow light, and then somebody else wants to argue for it, that's 3 minutes.
Okay. Any additional feedback? Sandy?
Yeah, I think that's a real good suggestion because that's when we're going to be hearing the big plug. I also wanted to just tell you I was laughing when I saw the word gestalt in there. As a psych undergrad, I'm like, gestalt, that's funny. Hopefully people will understand what that means. But mostly I just want to say that I just really appreciate you writing up. I think it's a process many of us have used, but to see it really outlined very in a methodical, linear way was really great. So thanks for your work on it. I don't have any other comments.
Thank you.
Last comment. You're going to hear me say this every time until we figure it out, but like body language signaling, fist of five kind of schemes are really helpful to make conversations like this efficient. I don't know if this is the time to try to work something like that in or not, but I'm just going to leave that out there.
All right, I will work those comments into that.
One,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, that was me. Chelsea, as you are actually facilitating these meetings, I think it would help you a lot to have like a big piece of paper written on the whiteboard, the time frames. So we're in like the 3-minute window now. We're in the 6-minute window now, just so people see a visual aid in front of them of how long they have. Then you can be a more, what
I
you
was gonna
call
use
yourself,
a timer.
ruthless. Yeah, perfect. There you go.
I was gonna have a timer. I was like, all right, 4 minutes, start, and then have a timer going in the background.
I think like people might struggle with this the first time because things have been so open-ended up until this point, but as soon as we get them like used to doing this, I think folks will fall in line and it will get quicker the more we do it.
All about efficiency, process automation. All right, and then I also wanted just to review quickly that I am working on, again, that education component of like how to be a grant reviewer. I have a really not great application that we'll talk about why it's not great, and I give you some feedback on why it's not great. And then application 2 is a decent application. We'll walk through what makes it decent. I also have, again, some more handwritten feedback on what makes it good and what makes it bad. And then we have a stellar application to look at, and we'll talk about what makes it so stellar. And again, there's that handwritten feedback on what makes it good and what makes it not, like where it still can be improved, because absolutely nothing is perfect in this world. The PhD ruined that for me. But so we'll go over just kind of those 3 different things again: how to look at these applications, how to review, how to use the scorecard. So I have that document written out. Next on the agenda is a brief financial update. So I'm going to turn it up to Chris. So we had, and Rhiannon can weigh in on this, we had some discrepancies with our cost expense report. Some of that has to do with the COAG and them building out the portal like while people are still using it, and Rhiannon doing our amendment, but then something happening on the back end and Jack not telling us that Rhiannon needed to resubmit the amendment. So some of it is cost, but some of it is us. And how do we track such a large budget that is constantly evolving? So we have, if you think of it, like we have our budget and then we have buckets of money. Those are our funding priorities. And then we have, even if we just have 2 contracts per funding bucket, and then each contract has categories of line items to spend on, that is a lot to keep track of. So Chris and I are brainstorming what that financial update would look like at the beginning of every month. But I'll leave the floor open, see if Rhiannon has a comment, and then if Chris has a comment, and then we'll see if anyone else would like to weigh in. Oh, Rhiannon, you're first.
Did I raise my hand?
Yes.
I thought, okay. Hey. Burke and Rosie can also speak to this, but we have started implementing just like a really brief financial review at the beginning of every council meeting. One, to keep the council up to speed with all of the money. This is especially helpful for voting members who are answering to constituents, like how much have you spent, where is it going, and how much is left. But also, as this, to Chelsea's point, gets more and more complicated, money's going to be kind of coming and going to various programs at different timelines as we go. And so this looks a little bit different in every region. And I think Chris and Chelsea are well equipped to figure out what's best for this region. I'm just going to give you a little window into what it looks like in other regions. For region 1, which is northwest corner of the state, lots of counties, lots of complexity in contracts. We usually have the fiscal agent actually like on the call talking exactly about expenses, money coming in and money going out. For region 12, there's a little bit less movement all the time. And so the finance team just sends us like a screenshot of their expense sheets and we put it on a slide and we kind of talk through any changes that have occurred from the previous meeting. Sometimes there's stuff to talk about, but more often than not, there's not really anything to talk about. So it's just like a quick share and then we move on. Right now, with the 3 programs we have funded, this is not quite as important. But as you all move into that strategic plan with $10 million and all of those goals, I think this is going to grow really useful for everyone to have a good understanding of where the money is coming and going. Burke, anything you want to add from doing this in Dougco or Northwest Colorado?
Nothing that's going to be helpful.
Excellent.
I will admit that my tracking is not usually very good for public consumption in the sense that it is Excel spreadsheets. I track every single expense, every single dime in, every single dime out, every time we get a deposit, everything's tracked. However, is it easy to digest on a public level? Not exactly. So Chelsea and I have been discussing that, and I've been working on, we actually use monday.com where I actually transparently put every single invoice that I get from one of our contractors. It shows whether it's been paid. I even actually attach a document once it's paid. So, and it's now reducing from their total contract amount. So basically, every time they invoice, it reduces until they have $0 left. It's a tracking. Not all tracking is the easiest to, visualize. Working towards doing that more in a dashboard style. And I think Monday will help us do that. However, Monday doesn't do the functions like an Excel spreadsheet does. So it makes it quite challenging. And I'm trying to trying to do that a little bit differently from a visual standpoint. But we do an intense amount of tracking on every single thing, how many dollars, and the tracking can get very tricky. And this is where I think we ran into some problems, is that there are projected amounts that even the national distributor said this is what you should be expecting. And then they revised it in December, right at the end of the year, when we already made our funding decisions. We already had to submit to our cost report, and it reduced the amount. But luckily our plan actually now aligns. We're not always getting the exact money that they're projecting. We sometimes have to wait and see what's in the bank account and what actually comes through, because I've seen smaller payments than what we were expecting. And that's what we need to track. And I track each and every one of those, but it's a matter of, kind of aligning things from what really happens versus what we're expecting to happen. So I need to have the reality with and align it to the true expectations. And that's what I keep trying to, and we'll find a good way to put it in a dashboard, I think fairly soon. That's what I'm reading the is, yeah, what money's coming in and what money's going out. And it's kind of like a bucket that shows how full it is, and then a bucket that shows when it gets a little less. By where it came out, how it poured out of that bucket. Yep.
And if there's ever more complicated, like nuance to our money, good conversation for this room.
Yes.
But for the council, and you all have seen this, if we give them too much information, we're going to waste too much time and we'll get lost in the weeds. So creating like a good little template, which is what it sounds like Chris and Chelsea are working on, to just tell them the most useful moving parts, I think will bode best.
Yeah. And there are nuances, and I'm going to say this because it's something we ran into in our cost report, is that we had December payments that weren't paid until January. So it couldn't be counted in the cost system. So we had to move those December payments into January because of when the system actually pays it out isn't the December 31st of 2024. It was January 15th of 2025. And so we have to move those funds sort of in a tracking as they got reduced out of the 2025 and not the 2024. So those are the nuanced things that happen with how you pay bills at the end of the year.
Mayor Bud.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions, and I come this from sort of a construction accounting background. Am I correct in assuming that we have a revenue stream from a given source that either on a periodic basis fills our bank account, if you will, with money, and then we, as the GROC, make contracts and obligate ourselves to pay certain agencies that are spending the money on our behalf a certain dollar amount. So the way what I would do in construction is maybe on a monthly basis, if I'm going to look at my books, see what our current revenue is, and then what obligations have we made on an aggregate basis against that revenue in terms of being able to pay. And then for each contract that we sign, somewhere in a spreadsheet or in another accounting, how much we're obligated to pay them, how much we've actually paid them, and then those two numbers minus one, it tells you how much you have left in their account to pay. And then usually you try to look, and is there a way to judge during the process of the project that they're doing for us, whether they're at a 5%, a 10%, a 50% completion, so that their completion matches the amount of money that we're paying them on an ongoing basis?
Yes. That is essentially what I do in an Excel spreadsheet, but yes,
okay.
I need to make it more readable to the overarching council so that they can see that the tracking and percentage wise, depending on, and I look at it exactly the same way you're talking about it, Mayor Strecker, is that you have to look at the total contract amount. That's what we've obligated. And as they build towards that contract, you know what percentage along the way, when you have your benchmarks of the contracts for 1 year, how much have they done within that 1 year? And if they're only 30% done and they're 8 months in, they're not going to finish that contract, obviously, to what they were supposed to.
Right.
Yeah,
Or if they've received 80% of the money and it looks like they've done 20% of the work,
Yeah,
we need some way to see whether it's sort of on track with the work that's being put into place.
exactly.
Yeah, so it's just a little disparaged right now. Like the Monday.com board is really good for tracking the overall budget month by month. There is a formula that says what their total contract is, what they bill in the month, and then what they have left. And then in terms of that, does the dollar amount meet what they're producing? That comes more qualitatively from the quarterly report.
Yeah.
And so hopefully implementing the learning forums for the grantees next round keeps a better pulse on that, so they know how to report. We can make adjustments if we need to, but it's not very public facing. It's very Chris and Chelsea hodgepodging things to make sense of it. So how do we make it more simple that could be more public facing? But then also, right now, we're not tracking budget line items. So like, I know Gilpin Sheriff had asked about this, and Advocates for Recovery had asked about this. Let's say they have $50,000 for both of them for laptops, and they only spend $48,000 on laptops. Can they move the $2,000 to another line item? And how picky, how micromanaging are we going to be about that? Do we need approvals ahead of time? Is that something that they can just tell us in the quarterly report? How are we tracking how much they're spending on their evaluation versus office supplies versus rent versus fringe? Because right now we're just tracking the total amount. But it didn't come up as being problematic until two groups asked if they could move money.
Move lines, yeah.
Yeah, and we said hypothetically, but we need more information. We need more information on that.
Well, and it probably would be helpful that when we start a contract with a vendor that's doing the work, to sort of get an idea about what their categorization is going to look like, so that you've got scopes of work attached to money. And then if they're moving the other $2,000 for the Christmas party, that might be different than new chairs for the conference room. So
yeah, and they do. They have their we have like ideas of their bucketed line items or their categories, but we're not necessarily tracking line item expenses yet.
Yeah.
And so we need to do that.
Rhiannon? But you also need to be careful, because you can get into a big labyrinth if you get too detailed, and I think it's reasonable to assume that people are going to be over in one bucket and under in another bucket. But if they're meeting the overall goals established in their pro forma, then I think we can have some flexibility in that accounting.
I was just raising my hand essentially to echo what Mayor Budd just shared. In both federal and state behavioral health related grant budgets, they usually allow a good deal of flexibility line item to line item. I think HRSA, for example, lets you move within your collective buckets unless it's over $25,000. That requires some type of approval and to change. So I like the idea of adding language in the contract moving forward that says up to X amount, you can move freely within your budget. If you have a line item greater than this amount, you need to take it to finance and we'll talk about it.
And just kind of count to each any just to our vendors that they create some a contingent or hiddens and unknowns in their budgeting process, so that they don't feel stressed out about, oh, well, we're right at the end of the laptop, or they had a price escalation in the laptop at the last minute. So I've got a contingency, fund into my budget in order to handle those things.
And we did, for this round, we did build in that contingency fund for people. So in the interest of time, I am going to move on to the next topic, which is the format of the meetings. So we have the format preference for April, May, and June is in person for the RFA reviews. Right now, we have some ad hoc meetings on the calendar as virtual. I did drop those in the chat. I will have an update for you at the April 7th executive committee meeting on whether we need those meetings or not. Those are really intended to be in the weed conversations. So if we have applications that are yellow lights and they need additional dialogue, we would move them to the virtual format on these dates. Again, I will have an update for you on April 7th, just depending on the number of applications that we have, if I foresee that we would need those meetings. And then, do we want to go back to virtual off in July? Sandy has brought up, which I've brought up before, having some in-person meetings in Gilpin and Clear Creek.
I have a quick, Bud, did you have a comment? Your hand was up before mine, or was that up from before?
No, I shouldn't. I just put a thumb up for being, for traveling around to the various counties.
Perfect. I would also support that. The one thing that I think we'll have to think about, though, two areas. One, do you remember we ran into some challenges with our, oh gosh, the word just quorum, the number that we needed for a quorum. So that is one piece. We would want to make sure that if we're going to travel to the 3 different locations and we don't have a virtual option, that we know people can attend those meetings, that we will have a quorum, even with the belief that 1 or 2 might drop off, That's one thing. That's one of the when we've had this conversation before, one of the reasons we thought it might be good to keep Jeffco as the central location. Again, I am absolutely open to traveling to different locations, and I think that's great. But the reason we kept it in Jeffco was 1, for consistency, 2, for the technology as well, if we needed to do a hybrid, or at least have that option, especially if we were going to lose a quorum by any chance, and that helped to lift those numbers back up. So I think, as long as we're in great shape and we've got the technology in all 3 locations that we would need to add a hybrid option if a quorum was at risk, I think we're good with that, and I think we should just run it by the council for their thinking as well. That's all I was going to add to that point.
We have technology. That's not a concern. I think the thing that's come up is that there's an expressed desire for people to come in person. But my point that I've made more than once is that it takes us as long to drive down and drive up as a meeting lasts. So just kind of coming from a point of equity, if we can move it around, then some are driving and some are staying in their home base. And it would also allow people that maybe don't have a chance to come in person to come at least that quarter or however it's structured. So thanks for considering it.
And I had my hand up on this one too. I like in-person meetings. These are handy for committee meetings, but I think when we get together as a group, we always have more really involvement in the thing. The thing we do at Dr. Cog is, and this is to Commissioner Dahlkemper's point about having a quorum, is to, if you're going to be absent and not able to attend the meeting in person, which is strongly preferred, that you sort of register that you're not able to make it, and you give sort of advance notice that you would participate virtually, so that we sort of try to address the quorum question.
Okay, I'll jump in. I'm more than happy to host you all. I'm also happy to camp out in the Taj Mahal. It's a great spot. I my concern, well, I'm going to take the bait on Bud's comment. I have been thinking about just going in person because the virtual option is too easy. And the in person, I don't know how, it seemed like maybe there were more people at the last meeting and I had to be virtual, so now I'm a hypocrite. But just some commentary from me. I don't know what to do with that. My concern really is around the meeting schedule. And Chelsea, can you run through, I see the ad hoc meetings, April 14th, June 9th. Is that ad hoc meeting after the scheduled initial review, or is it before that April 14th?
So I just dropped the website into the chat that has the full meeting schedule that lists the ad hoc meetings as well. So April 7th is a standing executive committee meeting that is virtual. April 14th is a full council ad hoc meeting. So we could potentially use that meeting in a virtual format to go over the sorting of applications, how to be the reviewer, troubleshoot, the overview. We could potentially use that then. April 21st is an ad hoc executive committee meeting. So again, if we have any of those yellow light applications that we really need to get in the weeds so far, then April 28th would be the first standing council meeting with reviews. May 5th is a standing executive committee meeting. May 12th is the regular monthly full council meeting. We moved that meeting up because I'm getting married the following week. And then so I'll be gone for 2 weeks. We have a ad hoc executive committee meeting on May 19th. Again, so if we have any of those yellow light applications. And then June 2nd is a standing executive committee meeting. June 9th is an ad hoc full council meeting. And then the 16th is an ad hoc executive committee meeting. June 23rd is the standing RFA full council meeting.
Okay, thank you. It was on the website, and that was what I needed to inform. What I want to do is I want to make sure you feel empowered to just go ahead and schedule an April 14th application review meeting if you see a bunch of applications. This is sort of going back to being worried about 6 minutes per application being not enough time. This is the way to solve that if we find a bunch of applications.
Yeah, so everyone already has that calendar invite.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that you feel.
As far as people know, that meeting is happening. But like I said, I'll have an update on April 7th. We might not need that April 14th meeting. We can just start at the April 28th and use the ad hoc meetings after that. Because again, we decided to make the ad hoc meetings completely virtual. But if we are discussing RFA applications, that in-person presence is going to be so much more engaging and fruitful. It's going to be easier for me as a facilitator. It'll definitely be easier for everyone else to keep track of who's talking when, how long they have to speak. I kind of wanted to go back to Sandy's comment. I'm trying to keep track of time too, because I have a few more things to get to. Were we thinking of moving the meetings around during the RFA conversations? Or I know Leslie posed taking July off, and then in August we could start going into Clear Creek and Gilpin. George is giving me a yes to the latter. Sandy, did you have a preference?
Are you asking, was I inquiring about our regular GROC meetings or the RFA? I was
Well,
only talking about the regular
okay,
GROC meetings.
so we would start going, I would physically start going into Gilpin and Clear Creek in August for the regular standing GROC meetings. Okay. Yeah, I'm great with that. It sounds like everyone is on board with that. So I will go ahead and work with the commissioners on their preference for August, September, October, November, December on the location. And then we'll have an update next month and on the website always.
I wanted to ask a question, Leslie and George. The CCI conference, June 2nd is the first day of it. And I don't know if we'll be able to be in both places. Are you, are you thinking that might be a day we wouldn't be available? Yeah.
What
Sandy,
date
I
was
think
that,
that's a
Sandy?
great point.
June 2nd. Sorry, Leslie.
No, that's okay. I was just agreeing with you. I think that's a good point. Is it possible to just cancel that meeting? Since we know kind of what we have coming up and we're doing some of the agenda setting in advance?
So June 2nd is the standing executive committee meeting, and that's going to be in the middle of the RFAs. So if we have yellow light applications that need to get discussed, that would be the time. I would feel more comfortable giving you an answer April 7th if we can cancel that.
Okay.
But I've made a note, and I will do my best to arrange applications so that we can cancel that.
Should we just there's a chance that all three of us will be gone. We will not be here. So should we, in light of that, just asking the entire executive committee, should we just go ahead and reschedule it? And then if we don't need it, we don't need it. As Chelsea, as you were saying, depending on whether we have yellow flags.
How
yellow
long is
lights.
the CCI conference?
What?
How long is the CCI conference?
It's Monday through Wednesday.
Yeah.
So then we would be looking at Thursday, June 5th for a reschedule. Because we already have meetings the week before, and the week before is the 26th, and I'm getting married. I'm not here. There is also an option to extend the Stedman contract because they will not be hitting their hours by the end of April that they were contracted for. So we also have the option of extending their contract into June to get us through the RFAs. That would not require additional hours. It's just moving the date. So then they could facilitate and you can meet on May 26th.
June 5th is great.
Okay.
Unless folks want, and the 26th is Memorial Day.
Oh yeah, so that wouldn't work anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not available on June 5th, but that's just one of us.
The 5th works for me. How about other people? I think the idea of not having you facilitate is not a good one.
Thank you.
I think we need continuity. Love you,
Okay,
Anna.
so does this time 1 o'clock on June 5th work for everyone? I know Sandy said that she's out.
Yes.
We have a Board of Health, so that would take Elisa out as well. It's at 2.
So if we move it up to 12 o'clock, would that work?
I have a conflict from 12 to 1:30 on the 5th.
Okay, I will send out a scheduling poll in the interest of time to get that week rescheduled. So listening to our updates, Jefferson County is going to be on March 20th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the Fay Griffin Conference Room. Gilpin County will also be on March 20th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. in the library in the big room. And then Clear Creek will be Thursday, March 27th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. in the Health Center. an evite went out, an email went out. I had roughly 60 people on every email, but please forward that around. The evite is not required, but highly encouraged because we are going to be providing food. So I am working with the commissioners to identify preferred catering. This is also posted on our website. I know Dr. Ryan, Dr. Ryan will appreciate the website. Thank you to everyone who participated in the bio. You all got some great pictures. And if you did not give me a picture, I went on Google. I tried to find your LinkedIn. If I could not find anything about you, you got a stick figure. I got Dr. Ryan's LinkedIn picture. It's my favorite one. So if you know people did not fill this out, please fill out the link. I'm still missing some bios from people. But again, this is just warm and friendly for people to see who the council is, their interest in the work, who their representatives are, and more ways that they can get involved. This will be migrating to a Civic Plus website at the end of March. I have a meeting next week to go over the mock-up. I did send the initial mock-up to George and Leslie. And then my goal is not to release the new website until July. I don't want to confuse people with the RFA documents and the links and the application. So we're going to keep it the same for now. Elisa, I need a picture of you then. Elisa did not like her stick figure picture. I didn't get a picture. Once I get a picture of you, I'm more than happy to update that. So that's an update on the website, update on the listening tours. That's it. Oh, I got 9 minutes. Are there any closing comments, points of discussion, concerns, or feedback?
No, thanks so much for keeping us moving forward though, Chelsea. We really appreciate it. And it is amazing to think that you're doing all of this while planning for a wedding coming up, and it's going to be here before we know it. So that's super, super exciting. Huge congrats on that front too.
Thank you. I'm doing my own flowers too. That makes me even crazier. I'm not getting a florist. I'm doing it myself.
Wow.
What is wrong with you? Why would you do that?
I'm very type A. Like, I just want to do it myself. Then if I don't like them, I have no one to blame but me.
The
And
council.
if I recall, you're getting married twice?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm getting married to the same person twice. Yeah, we have the wedding on Thursday and then the wedding again on Saturday.
Okay. Good.
All right, so I will send out the scheduling assistant for the first week of June executive committee meeting. I'm also kind of just if we can hold off until that first week of April. I'll get the scheduling done, but again, keeping in mind that we might be able just to cancel it. All right, everyone, thank you so much for your time. Have an amazing day. I appreciate all of you.
Farewell, everyone. I will miss you deeply. You're in good hands. Good
Okay,
luck.
thanks.
Bye, Ryan. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.
It's not letting me leave the meeting. This is just like a day it's been.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Awesome. Chelsea, just wanted to check in to see if there's anything I can do to support you or anything you need from me.
Did you get notes on the conversation with Sean?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
if I can just cross-reference.
I'll email those to you.
Perfect. Because George said my mic was going out, so I switched from like a 3-screen setup to my laptop, and then I lost a bunch of windows, so I missed some of the conversation. So yeah, if you could just email me that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And if you wouldn't mind keeping this meeting open for one more second, I want to copy over a couple of comments from Michael Miller in the checks. Michael had some really good ideas.
I think
sorry, just one second.
I think it also, definitely copy it now, but I think it saves. There's a recording.